Welcome to the Atomic Impact Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Osborn. And on this podcast, we interview successful business owners for them to share atomic, impactful lessons that they've learned throughout the course of their business. Share them with us so we can all learn together. As always, the show is sponsored by the LinkedIn Reverse Podcast Method, the new way that established businesses are creating a reliable acquisition channel of conversations with their ideal prospects. We use this method to book 26 qualified leads and sales calls in 10 days without any ad spend, outreach, endless social media posting, or any of the old, ineffective traditional marketing methods that everybody hates. To find out more, direct message me on LinkedIn, have a chat. The link to that will be in the show notes below. On today's show, I am very excited to have Antony Enright, the owner of Atomex, where he provides business and executive coaching for SMEs. I'm also excited because I know Antony personally for many, many years. So, Antony, welcome to the show today. And I want to start off by asking you a question that I always love to ask, which is this. If you were somehow able to go back in time to when you started your very first business, but knowing what you know now, what would you do differently in the first 12 months?
Hey, Jason, it's great to be here. That's a great question. I think looking back is one of those things. It's always one of those things, isn't it? You want to look at the lessons learned and you want to see what you did well and what you do differently next time. I think in the first 12 months, when I first set up my business way back in 1999, I don't think I'd do anything differently because that first 12 months was full of energy. It was full of real clear clarity on why we existed and what we were going to do and who we were aiming at. I think where the mistakes came was overthinking it later on in year 2, year 3, year 4. So I think if I was to go back, I'd look at it and go, I'd want to bottle that first year of all that focus. Certainly there was 3 of us in the business, the focus around, we were all really clear on why we were doing what we were doing, how we were going to do it, and who we were aiming at. And I think later on, when you hire more staff, when issues start to arise that you weren't expecting, that you start to move away from that purpose and that how and who you're aiming at. And that's where that's where the difficulties really started to come in. So that's probably how I'd frame it from that perspective, is how do you keep that energy and that focus when you're looking to actually grow, when you've got more staff and when you've got more issues that come into the business.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things I'd love to ask you as well, because that obviously is great advice there. But I know, having worked with you off and on over the last several years with different companies and things, I'd love to hear your answer on this. I know you work with businesses, you coach them, consult with them, help them with their teams, framework, their growth. What's if you were to look at the most common theme that if they were just able to figure this one thing out, it's a common thing. Every company has it. You know, as soon as they started going, okay, I know exactly where we're going with this because every company deals with this thing. What's that one thing that you know is always going to come up that if you could just somehow flip a switch that everyone know this, what would that one thing be?
Yeah, I think the one thing is all about the owner and their perspective on their role as the business grows and
Mm.
what they're prepared to let go of and how they let go of that. And I think really that's one of the things that can really hold business back and make it more and more complicated, is that you've either got an owner that's still holding on to everything, even though they've maybe got even a team of 20 or 30 around them, but they're still holding on to things. Or they've managed to delegate things successfully, but they're really miserable because they've delegated the wrong things. So I think where I'd start with the owner to understand what is it they love doing? Why did they start the business? What is it they love doing? And how do they start to build a team around them? Initially start with hiring those people that do the things that they don't enjoy doing, that aren't in their sweet spot. And then really focusing on what does great delegation look like? What does it really look like to let go, but also not abdicate the responsibility for that function or that area of the business? That's
Yeah.
where I see most really being stuck, and they can be stuck for a long time, even though they've hired people years and years ago. They haven't quite figured that piece out.
Yeah. Yeah. What's what do you typically find is that sticking point for them to actually hire the right people?
Well, I think that we could be opening a can of worms here, right?
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people think that hiring is easy, right?
Mm.
And hiring is an easy process. It's simple. It's just not easy. So actually, when you think about the process, you go, actually, that's quite simple, but it's not easy because there's a number of factors involved. And
Yeah.
what we don't do, and especially now, what I'm seeing with AI, is lot of job descriptions, a lot of job scorecards are being written by AI. And where we've really got to start is to take that time away. And that's one of the challenges for most business owners is when do you actually stop running the business and start to think about where are you going to improve it and transform it? And when you're going to stop to think, what does great look like from this next hire? How many of us truly stop for a few hours, maybe not at the same time and the same day, but a few hours over a few weeks to actually go, what does great look like? And really take the time to think, what do I actually need from this person? What do they need to come in and do that's going to make the change? And ultimately, what background do they come from? And I think that's where and I've certainly been guilty of it, and I see lots of others being guilty of it, is not really taking the time. What's the saying? Hire slowly, fire quickly. And I really think we can talk about firing maybe later on, but hiring itself is you've got to be. I'd take as much time as possible. If you think, what's the value? How much does it cost me if I get it wrong?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's spend the time at the very beginning focusing on really what it is that we're looking for and what does good look like, and go and kiss a lot of frogs. We're so fast in thinking, I've got this gap, it's got to be filled, it's got to be filled. Yeah, but we want to fill it with the right individual. I know it sounds obvious. All this stuff is obvious, but it's just about slowing down and kiss a lot of frogs. Go talk to a lot of people. But you've got to take time to go out and talk to people and find out. So I've got a company at the moment that I'm working with, and they don't really know what good looks like for a high level hire that they're about to make. So what they're doing now, they're going to events and they're speaking to anybody in their LinkedIn that has a similar job title just to find out what they think good looks like and whether what
Yeah.
they're thinking is realistic with their thinking.
Yeah.
So it's just being really crystal clear on what it is that you're looking for.
Yeah, I like that. That's really good. That's really good. One of the things I always like to ask on here is around challenges in business, because we all go through them. I know you see this a lot with business owners. It can be very isolating as a business owner. And oftentimes we can think, gosh, I'm the only person that's ever gone through this challenge. When really, it's not. So I like to normalize the conversation to help people. So having said that, what's the number one challenge that you personally have been through in your business? It can be in any area of the business. But what's the biggest challenge you've gone through, and what's the lesson that you've learned from that?
I'll go to the one that I think caused me the most heartache and caused me the most sleepless nights, and that was cash flow.
Mm,
Having a business that the actual revenue number looked great, but we didn't have any money in the bank.
mm,
And um, and at that point, everyone in the business thought we had a successful business. But the reality is we had no cash. And ultimately we had no cash because we were in a people business. We were consulting or hiring people out to other organizations, and people wanted payment in 7 days, and most customers weren't paying us till, in some instances, 120 days, right? So you end up becoming a bank. So the revenue number might look good, but the cash flow is an absolute disaster. And I think I had a real chip on my shoulder at the time that I knew my business better than anybody else, and I had to solve it myself. And I remember going to a number of different events and speaking to people about it, and they just didn't get it. And then eventually I just went and spoke to somebody. I remember having a conversation one day and I said, look, I've got this problem. And I was really honest and vulnerable about it.
yeah,
And they just went, it's really simple. You can't pay people on 7 days and wait 120 days. That's what a bank does. You can't do that. You're not a bank. So how are you going to fix that? So I think for me, it was just speaking to enough people and finding out actually who's the one person that's going to resonate with me. Because actually the solution on paper was really simple. And you know what? We turned it around in 30 days.
wow,
We just went to every single one of the people out there working for us. Employment law at the time was on our side and said, we're not going to pay you till we get paid. And we will, however, look to work this to a 30-day, but you're going to help us get the customer to pay us quicker. And that's what
mhm,
we did. And eventually, within about 6 months, all of a sudden the headaches were gone. Customers understood why it was such a pain to wait so long for money. They started paying us on time. I even had one customer pay me up front. They valued that much what we were doing. But we also got everybody involved. Once I was able to be honest and share that with everyone in the business, even the contractors, they wanted to be involved in the solution.
mm. You said something I think really important. I think a lot of people will just kind of skip over is that one, you faced it head on. You started asking for help around the situation, but you were honest with the people that you're working with and also honest with your customers and not afraid to have that money conversation, which I know a lot of people are very hesitant to have the conversation with. And I think that's a lot of growth areas that a lot of people can develop more into.
Yeah, and I think hearing you play that back to me, Jason, what's really interesting is that's not how that's me now reflecting on how it worked, but that obviously wasn't the plan at the time. That was the element of desperation that led to, right, well, we've got no other choice. I've got to speak to the customer. I've got no other choice. I've got to speak to my team. I've got no other choice. I've got to speak to my contractors and then actually learn the lessons from doing it that way. So I think that's the thing. But also I think as you get older and maturer and more confident, I think the more honest you are and the more you say no to your customer, when it's not acceptable, actually, the more respect they have for you and the more value they'll put on your service. I think when you start a business, you want to say yes to everybody, don't you? And you do end up saying yes to everybody. That's the nature of starting a business. It's how quickly can you get to that maturity point where you go, no, I'm not going to accept those payment terms anymore. I'm not going to accept those terms. And actually, if you're differentiating your service enough, and they can see the value in that they will most of the time these procurement um, and legal teams will take on those changes. Not
Yeah,
all the
yeah,
time, but a lot of the time they will.
yeah. Well, one of the reasons why I like asking that question is, and you kind of said this in what your response was, is at the time you weren't looking at it from a strategic standpoint. You were just as desperation. But every time I ask that question, or what's the number one biggest challenge, every single person that has answered that, it's always worked out. It might have taken a
Yeah.
month, it might have taken 18 months, but it's worked out and they're in a better place now and they've learned the lesson. And I think that's why I asked that question is no matter how bad a situation feels, most of the time it turns around. It may not turn around the way we think it does, but it turns around and we learn from it. So it's just amazing. But speaking of growth, where do you want to be in the next 2 to 3 years? What are your goals?
Yeah, that's a great question because I think for me, having run a business, scaled it and exited, and that's why I feel that I can go about sharing with others and helping others to do the same. Is for me, it's about working with as many businesses as possible to help them realize their potential. That's ultimately where I'm at, and because I want to remain really hands-on, the people that I meet and the companies that I meet. So at the moment, we've got some quite aggressive targets to triple the number of customers we've got in the next 3 years, but also the regions in which we're working in. So at the moment, we spend a fair amount of time in the Middle East working with teams there, and given the political situation there, that's a worrying but also fascinating time to when you're working with businesses in regions that are dealing with wars and dealing with the constraints of that. It's like what are they going to do to maintain their business whilst they're in the middle of a war-torn area? Right,
Mhm.
like fascinating and worrying, obviously, but fascinating, and also the power of when you get a team together under those circumstances is so powerful to go, we're all in this together. We're gonna beat this together, and we're gonna do what we can ourselves to ensure that our business survives. Um, you want to see the alignment that comes from that when you've got that real purpose behind it.
Yeah, I bet so. That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Well, Anthony, for people that are looking to get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to find you, contact you, so they can get the help that they need
Yeah,
from
I'm
you?
all over LinkedIn. So Anthony without the H, Enright, Enright. Anthony Enright on LinkedIn. I'm the only one on there. Anthony without the H. That's how you'll find me. Or at Anthony@atomex.coach.
Amazing, amazing. Well, I definitely recommend everyone reaching out to Anthony. And I actually like always mean that when I say that, but I've personally worked with Anthony. I would be happy to recommend him in heartbeat to anybody. So I know he can greatly help you in your business if you feel like you are just needing that business or executive coaching. So Anthony, thanks so much for being on the show and take the time out to be on today. I really appreciate it. And as a reminder to everyone listening, this show is sponsored by the LinkedIn Reverse Podcast Method, the new way that established businesses are creating a reliable acquisition channel of conversations with their ideal prospects that doesn't rely on any of the old traditional marketing methods that everybody hates. So to find out more, send me a direct message on LinkedIn to have a chat. That's Jason A. Osborn on LinkedIn. That will be in the show notes below. And until next episode, stay inspired.